We are back. Welcome back. Um, so if you're just joining us, this is part B of talking to Chris about his personality type. Um, and I have a guess, but I need to ask a few more questions just to be sure, because I'm not yet sure.
Hmm.
Um, I only have leads basically. Um, so a question I have for you is, how would you describe how, I'm assuming you have like a workstation of some kind
Hmm.
in your house. Could you,
Hmm.
in your mind's eye, explain to me what that workstation looks like?
So I have a place where I put stuff that I'm going to take to work.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking more like a place where I would sit down and do work.
Yes.
I don't have a place like that actually.
Okay.
When I was doing school, I would either just do it in bed,
Mm-hmm.
but actually, usually I would just get tired or something and not want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go to a coffee shop or I would go to that common room I was just in and I would do it there. Usually, yeah.
And what is it that you like about working in those kinds of spaces versus having a specific workplace?
Well, and this is actually consistent when I was in college. I didn't have a workspace at home that there either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like doing it at home because I found it kind of depressing. Um, I think it's depressing for me to be alone. I don't like to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, of course, my wife is there with me at the apartment usually, but even so, um, I just find like a desk in the corner or something like that. Just looking at it is depressing to me. Um, so I don't have a place like that. I would rather go to a coffee shop and it's just like there'll be some music playing
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there'll be some people there and it's just like a more positive energy. I'll just like feel better about what I'm doing. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I'm there to do the work, so I'll just sit down and I'll just do it and hopefully not get distracted. Whereas if I'm home, I'm more likely to just watch YouTube. Um, so I would rather be. I like an open environment with people. I've always been like that. Even when I was a little kid, I loved the energy of like a big stadium full of people. I love the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that type of environment.
And so, let's see. So, so, uh, so, given the choice to be alone or around people, you'd prefer to be around people.
Um, I like to be able to do my own thing while there's people around.
Okay, that makes sense.
I always want to have people around. I do like to be around people as well, but I like to study stuff and like things like that a lot. But I just like to have somebody else around, or I look up, there's nobody there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of depressing.
Oh, okay. What's depressing about it?
There's no like life. There's no literally there's no life except me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just sitting in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like there to be stuff going on. I really like there to be something going on
Mm-hmm.
in the around me.
Mm-hmm. 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 What is it about things going on around you that you think stimulates you in a way that stillness doesn't?
I feel connected to. I feel more connected,
Uh-huh.
basically. Yeah, I feel connected.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about like, some people are really kind of like really well emotionally equipped to handle other people having emotional problems. Like therapist types and things like that. And there's probably certain personality types that are kind of known more to have those qualities, and certain other ones that are kind of known to not have those qualities. But where do you fall on that spectrum? Um, how close or how far away do you fall from that level of sort of emotional giftedness or something. You know what I mean? Like your capacity, your innate capacity to help shoulder the burdens of other people's problems.
Right. Well, there's from my observation, there's like three components to that, or three different ways people do that.
Uh huh.
One way they do it is like being the dad or the mom, and like being like the source of strength that like
Mhm.
holds the other person in like a like I you've got this.
Mhm. Mhm.
That I'm not as naturally gifted with that necessarily. I think I've gotten better with that as I gotten older.
Mhm.
So that's one component. Another component is the emotional component, like responding emotionally to what they're saying and being affected. Um, now there, I can also do that, but I've had to think about that and to learn about it.
Mhm.
Because the third area is where I would naturally fall. That would be to analyze what their problem is
Mhm.
and kind of logically tell them, okay, this is why this happened. This is what's going on with you. Um, you have this type of problem or that type of problem,
Yeah.
or or I'll like explain the logic of their situation and come up with explanation for it for them.
Mhm.
And that third area is where I would most naturally fall, and um, I think that is actually the least useful of the three for most
why?
people.
Why is that? Oh yeah. Okay. Because are you saying because people just want to be comforted and not told what the solution
Yeah,
to their problem is?
yeah. They don't necessarily they don't want necessarily want to be told the solution. I
Right.
mean, now and then maybe they do, but it's in a limited dose, and you have to temper it with the other two.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I've learned to do that more being married, obviously.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have to. So, and prior circumstances as well.
Mhm.
But
So in other words, you have to withhold yourself from being so truthful, in a sense.
yeah, I have to withhold myself from being like too truthful about it,
Right.
and like, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but like, I wouldn't be the person that said, somebody's like, complaining about how they're a loser, and I'm like, yeah, you really are a loser. But
No, that's what that would be a funny response. You'd be like, "No, you have worth."
yeah, no,
Right?
no, I would never like do something that tactless at any point.
Right.
But I might, somebody's like explaining their childhood problem. I start analyzing and being like, well, the the uh, the this relative, well, they were doing that because of that probably, and that's typically how that type of person behaves.
Mhm.
And I might reference, like stories or proverbs or things of that nature
Mhm.
that are commonly used, and
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm more I would naturally more go to that, but I've learned to temper it because most people are not gonna find that as comforting, and that was kind of the point of what you're trying to do.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, now I have a thought exercise for you. Let's say that you were born like 2,000 years ago, or 2,500 years ago, 3,000 years ago, somewhere back in the bronze the bronze ages, the just before, just during the early ages of enlightenment things. But during those times, you know, all of the jobs that people would have had, you can think about the kinds of jobs people would have had back then versus the kind they have now. So
Hmm.
so if you had been born back during those days, what kind of job would you have naturally gravitated toward, knowing that you couldn't work in computers, or you couldn't, you know, drive a car or something? You'd have to have some. You'd have to be a cartographer. You'd have to be a soldier or something. You'd have to do something that would be much more manual, let's say, but
Hmm.
possibly intellectual. So where do you think you would? Where would you have gravitated back then?
So like Roman times or like earlier, like Sumerian,
You can
Egyptian.
pick one. I think like they'll have their equivalent jobs probably depending on the civilization. Like obviously not like when there's technological advances like scientists or something, but I mean there've probably been blacksmiths and sages and you know, architects, and you know what I mean, like all throughout the ages, just of different kinds. So you can pick one. Go ahead and pick whichever you like, and then tell me where you would probably be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe hopefully this is not just a false ego, but I would prefer, take the Greek times. I would like to be like one of the guys in the schools of philosophy or something
Mm,
like
mm,
that.
mm, mm.
Somebody, that's speculating about all these various interesting things, and maybe writing scrolls down or something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't go for farmer, and I would like to be a warrior, but I don't think I would have made a great warrior. So, yeah.
Why don't you think you would have been a great warrior?
Um, Going back to what we said earlier, there's like that strong physical
Mm-hmm.
component to it, and I just wouldn't have been as good at it as other people, most likely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, so I think I'm probably able to tell you what my guess is, and then I guess we could spend the rest of the time talking about it, and just see if my guess is anywhere close to what you were thinking. Um, so hold on one second. I'm just gonna update my little chart here. Um, and I also will write it down. That way, you can tell me what you got, or what you thought, what you've gotten before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, this is fine. All right, so here's my piece of paper, so you know I'm not fibbing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so what were the ones that you've gotten up to this point?
Mm-hmm. So, first time I was typed, it was Rowan LaPlante,
Uh huh.
and he was with WSS Socionics at the time. You familiar with Socionics?
I'm familiar with it, but not like super knowledgeable about it.
Gotcha. So yeah, he was one of the WSS is like the Western Socionics school.
Mm-hmm.
Jack London, or not Jack London, Jack Aaron is like the leader of that school. So Rowan LaPlante typed me LIE, which corresponds to ENTJ,
Mm-hmm.
TENI. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so he typed me that. Then um, the school overall was divided on that. The leading figures didn't necessarily agree or disagree. They wanted to see more.
Mm-hmm.
So then eventually, after some time, um, um, Jack of WSS typed me EIE, which is corresponding to ENFJ, FENI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there he said I didn't have the stereotypical FE Dom, but he said, you're a guy, and that is somewhat cultural. So, we're not going to expect you to just be like all the time,
Right.
because there's different expressions of it.
Right.
Um, I was typed by Galenko, who is like the leading figure in socionics living today in the West. He learned from Austra, who invented socionics. Um, um, and Galenko typed me LSI, which is TISE,
Mm-hmm.
ISTP.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see, and then um, and then lastly, host Eric typed me INFJ, NIFE. So
Well, this is I don't know what to say about this, but which of those people do I actually agree with one of those?
the common thread is NISE valuing,
Yeah.
and that's basically the only common thread. So,
Well, this is going to be a
yeah,
case where I agree with host Eric. I think you are,
interesting.
and I am not inclined to say this one for people, just because I think so many tests kind of seem to tend to skew that way.
Hmm.
But I can give you some explanation for my reasoning. Um, so I had it down to ISTP, ENFJ, and INFJ. So if that tells you anything,
Hmm.
it was ultimately down to ISTP and INFJ. I couldn't get away from some very INFJ type things about you that I don't think ISTPs deal with. So, um, first of all, I think you value extroverted feeling quite a lot more than an ENTJ does, and I think you value it quite a lot more than an ISTP does too. Um, so I could see why. I could see why someone might think you were an ENFJ as well. Um, the reason I don't think you're an ENFJ is because ENFJs seem to have no problem acting, and that's that tertiary extroverted sensing. And just like with INFJs, where you're constantly thinking all the time because you have tertiary introverted thinking, ENFJs seem to be always acting all the time because they have tertiary extroverted sensing. So they whatever their relationship with the third function is, I don't know, but it seems to be like, I don't know. People seem to be obsessed with their third function somehow, or like constantly wanting to do it for whatever reason. So um, so that clues me in to some degree that you don't struggle with the same, or let's say you struggle with something that in my observation, ENFJs don't seem to struggle with. Um, your relationship with extroverted thinking also is a little bit softer. ENFJs are really lost when it comes to extroverted thinking. INFJs are mostly lost when it comes to extroverted thinking, but not entirely lost, just mostly. And I think that's because I think INFJs make up the slack by being really perceptive and able to sort of predict their way through problems where that might require strong knowledge of the external world like an extroverted thinker would have. An INFJ can sort of intuit their way through it with very little information somehow in an almost unexplainable way. Um, so uh, So that's why I don't think you're an I really don't get the sense that you are an ENTJ from knowing from knowing ENTJs, but also um, to me you just seem and I know that's too abstract. I can't say how you seem. I guess I would just say that introverted feelers, introverted preferring, people who prefer introverted feeling, extroverted thinking are not able to necessarily easily construct really airtight logical arguments on the fly over and over like you do, which is a very introverted thinking thing to do, is to come up with all these kind of, and then you couple that with introverted intuition, so you end up creating all these like airtight universal statements, and that you can't be budged from very easily. Um, and that can be constricting to other people, but that's just the reality. The other thing that you clued me in really at the end, where I was really hesitant for a bit that you would be an NI Dom, but where it really kind of uh, put the nail in the coffin for me was the sense that you actually start as this just brutally truthful person, and you have to pull yourself away from that. Is I think something that NI Doms deal with is that like my childhood, I got along very well with adults who appreciated my candor, but I didn't get along with kids at all because I didn't understand subtlety.
Hmm.
Everything was just on or off, you know, and that got me in a lot of trouble. And then over time, I was able to uh, dull that a little bit and not be so beat people over the head with the truth kind of thing. Um, so yeah, and then everything you were saying about it, everything you were saying about this hesitancy to to act does sound like an inferior extroverted sensing kind of thing. And I did a video called "Why INFJs Are Like Jack in the Box." You should watch that one. But I kind of describe a metaphor too of like seeing a train coming and then not getting onto the other side of the tracks in time, and then just kind of having to watch it go. And I think that's how inferior extroverted sensing oftentimes feels. It's like you know intuitively that the timing is right, but you don't have the capacity to act on it, and then you have to just sit there and watch because you knew that the timing was right. You have to watch it go by, and and then it's gone. So, you know, so I think that's, but I mean, I think a lot of people do deal with that, but I think especially though when you have inferior extroverted sensing preference in this sense.
Like walking in a swimming pool, kind
Sure.
of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit, and that might be due to I think INFJs are really prone to analysis paralysis, and that can be compounded over and over and over again by many different factors, like I must act on something urgently right now. I must move my body in some place right now in some specific way that is very specific. and I also must not consider all these other possible solutions. I must, and so all these things pile up, and it just causes you to kind of lock up because you say, I don't have enough time to think this through. I just want to pause time and like spend about a day thinking about it, and you don't have that time. So um, time is the enemy in the INFJ's case, I think. So how, I don't know. So now out of all those typings you've gotten two that were the same.
Hmm.
How I the other thing I was unsure about with you being an INFJ is when you said that you didn't have your own like space where you work. Um, I was just kind of like that to me sounds very uncharacteristic of an INFJ, but I also thought to myself, well, many INFJs that I know have been through some level of PTSD, and that can have an effect. And maybe that's not something you've dealt with. I don't know you, but I can't discount that you might be a more healthy INFJ than a lot of other INFJs are, and don't find it necessarily too disturbing to be around people like that. But I think what you've described is more about ambient uh, the ambient environment more than wanting people to necessarily constantly come up and talk to you or interact with you over and over again. That's the impression that I got. I don't know. You'd have to tell me. But like, do you want to be approached when you're doing that, or do you prefer to be left alone?
No, I initially perceived that as an annoyance.
Okay.
Um, yeah, initially.
Oh, there was another thing that got me on the trail of INFJ too. It was when you said that you were real suspicious when people are nice to you. I was like, yeah, I can relate to that one. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
I don't
wonder
know.
what is he up to?
So to me, that means you're making all kinds of you're having all kinds of intuitions kind of about that person that have nothing to do with anything that they've like. Maybe a lot of other types would have said, "Oh, this person's friendly. Hey, how's it going?" You know what I mean? And it would have been a big love fest kind of. But like certain types are immediately suspicious of that kind of because they are intuitive and they can. Well, it's not only intuitive people that can sense that kind of thing, but to me, maybe it's an extroverted feeling thing, possibly. Um, to have a set. And the other thing was you mentioned embarrassment, shame, as well as a little bit concern of social norms or pressures. Those are definitely extroverted feeling things. Um, so that just kind of gets me off that ENTJ scent. Um, yeah, what else can I say? Yeah, you're interested in philosophy. You're interested in people. You're a writer. These are sort of just normal things for INFJs, not like other types don't do those things, but just cumulative, more things to add to the list. Um, your um, your your 3 points on my two different intuition tests uh, were to me were kind of inconclusive. So I was kind of like I could go a number of different ways. Like getting 3 out of 5 on both of them made me think you were an ISTP for some reason. Because I feel like ISTPs are somehow pretty good at a lot of different things and a lot of different ways of thinking, um, and like using different kinds of intuition and logic to solve problems. Really clever people. So, anyways, that's what I was thinking initially. But yeah, and then I don't think I was ever really on the track of extroverted intuition, introverted sensing. Like there wasn't really at any point really where I was kind of sensing that from you, any of that. Despite you talking a lot, I just figured I talk a lot, and when I'm on certain calls, if it's contextual, I'll talk a lot, and that's it's not like extroverted intuitives have the premium on that. But listening to the way that you talk and listening to the way you're formulating your thoughts led me to fairly early on think that you're using a lot of introverted intuition.
Hmm.
Um, so and and you think and you often find you often seem to drift to universal terminology. I know that you were saying things like that very literally, but oftentimes I'm not. I just like you're suspicious of somebody being nice to you. I'm suspicious when somebody tells me what they're like. So
Oh
I'm
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
more interested in hearing how you describe it, or trying to throw you off and ask you something you don't expect. Um, so I think that's those kinds of things were what convinced me at the end of the day, because you said a lot of things at the very beginning that could have on the face of it sounded like a few certain types, but I was like not willing to take those at face value because I yeah that I've been led off the track before uh, initially, and then as I listened to somebody I realized, oh, they're a different type than I was thinking they were. So anyways, yeah, so any other thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I would say yeah, that's two for INFJ. I mean I can see it. If the weaknesses would fit, and that that's one of the biggest things you can tell. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the other typings I did have, they all put me other than that first one for ENTJ,
Mm-hmm.
the all the and when I was doing that when I was like trying to be successful in business and stuff, so I was like putting forward a persona a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe that threw him off. But
Maybe.
I mean, the other ones, they're all beta quadra. So like, they share the
Mm-hmm.
SE,
Right.
NI, and the FE,
TI.
TI
Yep.
axis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So that's all in common.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would really say like the biggest thing, yeah, like in terms of like action or impact, things of that nature, I would say that yeah, that of those four, FE, TI, NI, SE, I would say SE is the biggest area of weakness, so that should put it in the inferior. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, there you go. I mean, that would explain. INFJ is one of those types that is probably harder to type uh, because of the baggage, I think,
Hmm.
associated with it. Um, and I think that NE users. Well, Eric. So host Eric is interesting because when he types people, I I I would expect him. It's funny because he doesn't see introverted intuition the same way I do as an introverted intuitive Dom,
Hmm.
but somehow he sniffs it out in a different way that he knows how to do. So that's what's interesting about watching him type people is that he doesn't do it the way I would do it, but somehow he gets to a really reasonable end result, in my opinion. Um, yeah, so I mean, I haven't watched if he's typed anybody recently, but I've watched a bunch of his videos. Generally, I agree with him. I mean, sometimes I think he jumps to conclusions way too fast, but at least he's really entertaining, so that he's got that going for him. Um, but yeah, I think he probably has let's say more level-headed viewpoint of the cognitive functions than other some of the other ones I've watched because they seem to take um, almost aggressive stances on certain things versus dispassionate. You know?
Yeah, they're more concerned with being right than they are with actually understanding the system, and
Right.
because
I'd
what we're
rather be
dealing with.
reasonable than right.
Yeah, yeah, you want to be right because it's important, and I just feel like I feel like we're dealing with a system when you're attempting to classify everybody into 16 different archetypes, basically, or not archetypes, but types. What you're doing is you're taking an enormous amount of data points, like a huge amount of
Yeah.
data points, and you're trying to create like a template for that
Right.
to encompass so much, incredibly much data. So it's inherently going to be super slippery to apply those symbols correctly. The types I view like any SI, like you can have objective definition, but to me, like it's more. it's more of a symbol than it is an objective definition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds right to me. That sounds right. I mean, this is weird, but are you familiar with GPT-3?
No,
Um, well, you know Elon Musk, right?
definitely.
He created a company called OpenAI,
Hmm.
and OpenAI uh, created software algorithm called GPT-3, which is a an AI. Um, let's say it's an interpretation engine that reads in the patterns of what you're telling it, and then it continues what it because it's been fed so much information and so much data. It anticipates what you mean next, so it can auto generate text that you know that matches what came before it. So
Hmm.
this auto generated text can be used for all kinds of really creative uses. We haven't even scratched the surface of what you can do with it. But I've been toying around with it, and I feel like it's strangely enough I have been learning about human consciousness by playing with this AI because it is built with all of the information that we've put into it as humans. It's built with everything humans tell us or humans have written on the internet and stuff. And where I'm going with this, I know I'm getting there in a very roundabout way, but uh, at a certain point, things get real fuzzy, and when it comes to like writing something for an AI, um, you essentially write a program that is a scenario. It's like a context. You write like two or three paragraphs or some kind of lead in, and then it continues. So you're creating like an algorithm of some kind, um, and in a sense, anything like MBTI, these other ones, they are just algorithms of some kind that try to optimize to some kind of end result, to some kind of uh, success aspect of success. And it just so happens that MBTI's success metric is being able to fit you into these four different dichotomies, and that's it. Um, and um, as a conceptual thing, it can be as valid as code or something that you write for an AI to write. It doesn't necessarily mean it's science, but it is language. It is programming of some kind. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So so that's kind of how I see it as in much the same way that like I could write a book and someone could read it and that could change their viewpoint and they could go do something else and that could change them. There's a meme there, some kind of repeated repeated pattern that happens. Similarly with MBTI, somehow the pattern has stuck around long enough for a while, anyways, because of its mimetic qualities, its ability to classify people. Somehow that has resonated with people strongly enough that there's been a collective sense of, oh, these things have some validity to them. So that's a very roundabout way of just trying to say that um, at the end of the day, even if it's something scientific, the collective group has to sort of accept it or reject it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but it does give it some kind of credibility from the sense of like social acceptance. Like I said, doesn't mean it's true, and astrology has probably more social acceptance than even MBTI. So that doesn't mean it's more true, but I mean, I guess I guess astrology and religion and MBTI and all of these different things are fascinating to study because they do tell us about the symbols and they do tell us about what's going on in our subconscious. And from that aspect, there's something to be learned from them. So that's kind of how I see it.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I agree. MBTI, I think, is almost like a superior version of astrology. Basically,
Sure.
As- astrology, like the horoscopes, is it's just Barnum statements. It's just like
Right.
a bunch of vague statements that anyone can relate to most of them.
Yeah.
But the better astrologers, from my understanding, what they do is they introduce all these different, more complex elements,
Mhm.
like your moon and your rising star,
Mhm.
like a whole
Mhm.
bunch of stuff like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so they introduce like a whole bunch more statements, and so they
Mhm.
can craft an explanation that will be tailored to you. So the
Mhm.
good ones really do describe your personality using this astrological
Mhm.
language.
Mhm. 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 Yeah.
And
And the
yeah,
same thing with like fortune tellers and tarot card readers. I think it oh, did I lose you? All right, let's wait a second for Chris to come back. I'm probably going to end the video here soon, but I think we should finish this conversation. I guess I'll take this time to say thanks for watching so far. And I hope you will subscribe and keep an eye on new videos of me typing people. And go back and watch all the old ones. Why not? There's a whole bunch of them. I think I've done this like 20 times now, something like that. Oh, here he comes. Let's let Chris back in. Hey, welcome back.
hey, I hit the wrong button.
No
My
worries.
bad.
No worries.
Yeah, you were tarot card readers.
Yeah, tarot card readers. I've looked into it a little bit. I think that what is really fascinating about it is just like MBTI gives us a framework to think about things in the dichotomies, tarot cards do the same thing, and it just goes to show you how good at pattern recognition humans are. That you can flip over any tarot card and that somebody can make an interpretation out of that fits you. I think that's really fascinating, and I think it just goes to show how good we are at intuition as a species. Um, I think that tarot cards are a tribute to our collective symbols and our intuition than it is to anything mystical. Um, and I guess I shouldn't be so dismissive of it because of that, because there is something to that, and uh, the power of suggestion. Go watch Darren Brown, like that guy. There's an INFJ for you. But he's just really good at showing how you can set the stage and really create a narrative for people, and they'll accept it. And that's really interesting.
It is, yeah. It's and it's I've never had it done, but I've known people that had the same interest, and yeah, there's a lot of crossover between interest in MBTI and interest in astrological,
Mhm.
and even religion as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
All of them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's the mystical side. It's yeah. I think all these are they do fall somewhat within the domain of intuition, although it is susceptible to probably other functions can understand that as well.
Well, I think where religion catches more people is it has something for everyone. It's got the deep questions for the intuitives, and it's got the authoritarianism for the introverted sensors and extroverted thinkers. Um, and it's got the community for the extroverted feelers. So, religion, religion really is a it catches a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, I think, and not all of them bad, but uh, well, they say if you want to make good people do bad things, you need religion. So,
Yeah, yeah, that was Hitchens, right?
maybe I can't remember who said that. That does sound like a Hitchens thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I
he
think
definitely said that.
I have God is not great on my bookshelf. So by Hitchens.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah. Anyways, okay. So do you have a question to end it up? I usually open up to a question. Do you have any questions for me before we go?
Hmm.
Yeah. Go
Um,
ahead. Hit me.
yeah. So, I would say like so. There are these elements like Ni, Ne, SESI, so on, um, and those definitely seem to be valid, and I can observe them. Now, how rigid or how correct is the structure within which they're placed? Like, for example, the rule being that let's say that if you are Fe dominant and you express a lot of that, then you're also going to express Ti in the inferior. Would you say that that is as valid, or do you think that actually maybe it's more loose than that?
Um. Well, I think that's like asking if an inch is valid, because an inch is just an arbitrary measurement of some kind to try to say that it's some distance from something else. Just like calling something red and calling something else pink is like some kind of abstraction between the level of light that reflects off of it or something. So I don't think so. I think the intention of these dichotomies, or not, let's say not the dichotomies, the intention of the axes of saying extroverted feeling, introverted thinking, is meant to get you to think of trade-offs, I guess, or something like that. Like trying to observe in somebody else what they're trading for what when it comes to their preferences in their behavior, or what they're how they're talking, or how they're thinking, or something like that. So, um, part of some of it is collective wisdom. You know what I mean? Like a lot of this is collective wisdom. Reading what other people have written, watching other people make videos, watching other people type other people. That's interesting. And just hearing what their thought process of what they're observing is, and what they're calling out when they're observing that, and then using your intuition to say, are they reading that the same way I'm reading that? And this is all very fuzzy, right? So I think so I guess the way I would describe it is, what I'm looking for mostly is not whether somebody can use extroverted intuition or not, because, like, for example, uh, I did the convergence divergence test with you, and you got 3 out of 5 on both of them, and it's the test is designed by me uh, to uh, to try to understand, do you more quickly are you more quickly able to come up with a lot of different ideas about one thing, or are you more quickly able to find a lot of convergence in many things? Um, and that's all I'm trying to understand when I ask you that question. Um, and that doesn't necessarily tell me about introverted sensing or extroverted sensing or anything like that. But if I can, what I'm looking for is an easy in. I'm looking to get my shoe in the door somehow. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking for the obvious thing first. What can I most obviously conclude, if there is anything obvious? And I keep wanting to say dichotomies. These these axes uh, seem to hold up, at least by my experience. But then again, that's like saying an inch seems to hold up. You know what I mean? Like, an inch, of course, an inch holds up. It's an inch. You know what I mean? Like, but an inch is not meant to be some source of objective truth. An inch is just meant to be a measuring um, unit of measurement. That's it. It could be. It doesn't have to be an inch. It could be a centimeter. You know. So MBTI doesn't have to be MBTI. It could be something else. It's just a name for something. So who knows? Maybe somebody watching this or somebody in the future will come up with something improving MBTI somehow that uses a different way of thinking about it. It's not out of the question. People keep trying to do it. So you know what I'm saying? So I think it is an evolutionary kind of thing where if something better comes along, then it will start to gain prominence and people will prefer it because it will somehow be simpler to understand or whatever. It's its mimetic value, you know? It's like, can it travel faster? Is it more information dense? And is it easier for people to learn and understand? And is it easier for them to observe the behavior of other people and label it and identify it somehow? And it's like if you take all those things and put them in a blender, the more a system can do those things, the more people will accept it as a usable system. And it just so happens MBTI seems to have struck a chord with people as a pretty usable system of measurement in a world where you can't just go put somebody in a lab and try to do experiments on their personality and try to figure out what their personality type is. It's like field research kind of tool, probably similar to studying apes or something. you just like observation. You can at least do experiments on apes. You can't do experiments on humans. At least not ethically speaking.
Not ethically.
um, so I think that's as long like I know that researchers like ocean a lot more. And I can understand. I think I can understand why. Um, but I still stand by my thinking that for everyday people, MBTI, just like you don't need to have a scientific calendar. I've had a couple drinks tonight. You don't need a scientific calculator for everything. If you're just an everyday user, you just need a regular old calculator. And I think that's probably a good parallel to MBTI. Is it's not a scientific calculator. It's just a regular old calculator that
Hmm.
is only so precise, but it's useful in a pinch.
Yeah, it's good. It makes you see like there's some sort of deeper structure as well. Whereas ocean
Sure.
isn't that like a like neuroticism extroversion model?
Yeah, openness, neuroticism, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Right. That one, I feel like I think I would have scored very differently at that earlier in my life, like significantly differently. I
Sure.
think I would have been much higher in neuroticism for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whereas now I'm low in neuroticism, I would say. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
one, it's like a lot more just like a collection of adjectives describing somebody's current state versus this is like trying to say something about the deeper structure of their personality. So that's why I like it more.
Yeah. Um. It's and this is where things get tricky, I guess, is that scientists are not primarily concerned with the deeper state as much as what can they observe right now and
Yeah.
what is trackable right now. Maybe you could say the continuity if you gathered your personality data over the course of your life, then that would be something they would find useful. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, we're all augmented mutants.
Yep. Yep.
That's
We are.
that's all I can think about this. I think we'll end it on that. How's that sound? I think it was a good conversation, and thanks so much for taking the time.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, on rewatch you can see what I was doing on the screen, and maybe you'll have to leave a comment and let me know how you thought it went.
I will. I will for
So
sure. So thank you.
yeah, for sure, Chris. Well, thanks for joining. Thank you those viewers at home, and see you in the next video. Take care. Please subscribe.